going to spend a little bit more time getting questions from the audience because there's so many of you and there's so many hands already. We're just going to go one by one. Now, I will walk up on this side and then you go up on the other side. Like I saw right all the way over there, the first hand going up. And I'm sorry, we're not going to go through everybody, but it will help if you ask a question rather than have an entire statement, so that we get also the views from the panel. But I think everybody will feel the responsibility to keep it a little bit short. I saw you first, so would you like to say who you are and then ask your question?
Okay. My name is Brian, and I think I just start asking the question. Okay. It sounds like we all know what is right to do, but it sounds like also the stance and attitude of the European Union are very ambiguous and inefficient, and also sometimes even opportunist. And if the EU and its Parliament are not willing to do the right thing, even though they know what it is, then if, as well, the majority of the Westerners are supporting Ukraine, and I want to know how committed actually they are, how much they would like to sacrifice, or just how the West possibly mobilize the long-frozen military industry. Can we still rely on the procrastinating democracy process? If not, do you even suggest we should have a Roman dictator just to set the things right?
Okay, well, thank you for this very provocative question. I'm looking at Thijs, because on the one hand, you're trying to keep this on the agenda, on the other hand, you're not really a big fan of dictatorships. So, would you like to respond?
Yeah, so the answer, of course, is no to that question. Of course, we don't want that. But I also want to contribute a little bit to the more, the glass half full approach of Mr. Sones. Because the good news, when we are fighting autocrats within our own union, like Orban, but also if we face the challenge of the ammunition and delivering the weapons, the good news is that, in principle, we have the tools. We have the solutions, we know what we have to do. What is lacking at times is the political will. I've been talking about this also last week on the radio with Boekestein in the Wijk, so people who want to know more about it can listen to the podcast. But the essence of the ammunition and the weapons delivery problem is political will, because we need to be creative. We need to make sure that existing contracts are coupled to the demand of new factories that are willing to open, but they ask long-term security. Okay, so if we have existing contracts of countries outside Europe that need that stuff, but we also have new factories, we need to just match that and say, look, at the moment we need it, but we can guarantee you that in a year or two there will be new deliveries from newly opened factories. We need these factories anyway, because we are entering into a time of less clear international geopolitical circumstances. That is not because we all wish for that, but we need to rearm ourselves, we need to rebuild our defense, also to be able to replace possibly less help from the United States. The European Union needs to be able to take responsibility for its own security. So it is an existential problem as well. But the idea and the plans are there. We need to execute them.
Thank you very much, Thijs, and thank you for the first question. I'm looking, of course, over there to see for the next question. Jana, it's up to you. There are many hands going up, and I will also go around here for the next question. Yes.
Hi, thank you. I would have the small question of, so with the EU elections coming up, and the discussion being mostly focused on countering Russia's conventional military capability with the defense industry and investing more in that. Do you think that member states do enough to address the threat of Russian hybrid warfare that poses a risk to the democratic processes, especially now in the upcoming EU elections?
Is there a particular panelist you're asking this question to, or can somebody pick it up who wants to?
Mr.
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer that, but I'm really not a specialist in hybrid warfare. Maybe Mr. Sones also knows a little bit about how we are doing that, but no, we are not doing that. we are not doing enough, because if you look just simply at the amounts that Russia is still spending on its own, on Russia Today, annually on Russia Today, I think they spend more than the entire budget that the European Union and the United States together spend on countering cyber warfare, or countering disinformation. But yes, we do have a Stratcom task force now in the European Union on that, but it's very limitedly financed and it's not doing enough. But I must also say here, and that's maybe the politician, more the politician that it's an illusion that we can completely eliminate this information. What we need to do, and our friends in the Baltic countries, for example, are much better in that. We need to become ourselves resilient. We need to become aware and be able to recognize what is disinformation and what's not. And we are only at the beginning of that, but I think we need to invest more in that, and that requires public debate, it requires a lot of the discussions, and people take responsibility to that.
And it also requires an addition from Ms. Dimitrova.
Yeah, well, I think already the creation of the Stratcom of the European Union was a step ahead, but what we've seen is that the member states are also very ambivalent about exactly how to fight disinformation, because of course the problem is you don't want to end up with a situation such as in the Cold War, where you're producing propaganda, the other guys are producing propaganda, and nobody trusts anyone. So debunking disinformation psychologically is also very, very difficult. I think here, actually, the steps taken by the lawmakers, the council, and the parliament on the various digital acts which have been passed are perhaps the most interesting, in the sense that social media are a huge part of the problem. The lack of verification, the possibility of buying Facebook groups, the possibility of influencing TikTok and Instagram. I think this is where a lot of this is happening. And if we can enforce the European Union's recent legislation, yes, the Digital Services Act, perhaps there we can actually achieve much more than targeting, saying, let's go and find where the Russians are plugging this information, because they're plugging it in many, many places. So it's a question of, can we deal with the big media companies, the big social media companies? And I also fully agree with the resilience. You have to think about this when you watch your TikTok and Instagram.
Thank you very much. So the answer is no, we're not doing enough. We should do more, and there are some options of doing it. Thank you for your question. I'm coming to you, and then I'm going back up. It seems there's more questions on this side than the other. I don't know what happened, but yes, please. I will hold the microphone. That's part of the game.
Hey, thank you very much for a very interesting discussion. My name is Maria Žarnonikova, and I have a few questions which are, as for me, quite related to each other. We're talking now about what can EU do for Ukraine, but what do you think Ukraine can do in order to get more support and military aid, financial aid, etc.? And related to this, what do you think about the fact that Ukraine didn't set up any weapons production for the last 2 years of this invasion? And what do you think about the potential threat of Russian invasion to European Union, and if the support to Ukraine can be decreased because of this?
Thank you. Well, they're slightly different, but hopefully we can deal with all of them. Would you like to start?
Yeah. A little bit I will start about first ask about what Ukraine can do for support Europe supporting Ukraine. Yes, I'm right. Understand first. Yes, we are a lot of Ukrainians are here in Europe, and a lot of them also trying to help Ukraine from here. They are also victims of this war, and but they not fall. That they continues to do something and trying to help Ukrainian also feel this situation in Ukraine and better understand. And also say about Ukraine. And very important now it's about things it's Russian propaganda about are also in Ukraine. For example, few last weeks I look, for example, in some social media informations. Russian some agents also use pictures of Ukrainian meetings and also but put any text, for example, that Ukrainians want to finish this war and not want to continue to do. But it's a first. But we want to continue to we are ready for continuous fighting and ready. It's one of the reasons why I stand before full-scale war. Sorry, I will make a little bit hack in my speech. Before full-scale war, I don't want to. I don't think that I want to be a soldier or officer or something. I have any targets. I have any principles of my life. But when it happens full-scale war, I understand. For defend my principles, for defend everything what I like, I need to defend. I need to fighting. I need to join to army and to do. And now we continue fighting. Also, and here and in Europe, about weapon. What Europe very help us, support us with weapon, with technique, and any. But if say clearly, it's not enough. It's, for example, we are fighting this very big giant, very big economic and totalitarian gigant. For example, if if we get some amount of military, he producing a lot more, and he not need to make some democratic election for decide that we need to do this or not to do, and. Now about this, for example, if we did get this amount of military support 2 years before, maybe this war would be finished. But now we need a lot more, and also now. But in any case, we are ready to continue to fight with weapon, without, but we're ready to do this, and because it's the most important for us. It's we are born without any targets or principles, or we are, but with our way, we are serious something what very important for us, and we are ready to defend this. Yes.
Thank you. In the interest of time, I've got. So I'm sure there's going to be more to say about this, but I would like to go. Yeah, I saw you also straight away, and I'm sorry, there must be so many more questions, but I can only get to one more before I hand over back to the organization. So please go ahead.
I'll play your game, Mr. Gooding, and you can hold the mic as long as you want. I'd like to say one more thing first. My name is Sally, 30 student here in Leiden University. I'd like to thank you, Mr. Soos, for your very striking and pretty rare take on the double standard of international law. I think it's a topic that now, especially now across Congo, Palestine, Kashmir, and any other country that's ridden with war, is very, very pressing. Andrei, or Mr. Siromaka, if I said that correctly, and every other Ukrainian here, I come from Syria and I understand what it's like being in war. We're going on our 13th anniversary, and we've been there in 13 years, and I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy, what every other person here, whether Ukrainian or not, is feeling. And I hope that, and I sincerely do, and I understand that I hope it'll end soon. If it doesn't, you keep on fighting like you rightfully said. On to the question now. This is on to Taste Leviton and anybody else who wants to answer. But in the case that Russia wins, what would Ukraine have to take in measures of security to guarantee safety? And as well with the EU, what would they have to do to guarantee safety, whether it's borders or whether it's moving troops towards the new Ukrainian border in the event that Russia wins? Thank you.
Okay, and if you would like to answer, could you maybe also pick up what it does to the sense of European security, if that would be the case, because it kind of ties into the third question about the previous Person, thank you for your question. I will go back down and just let Thijs answer first.
Yeah, for me, we can also take a couple of more questions, but all together and then.
Well, the time is up, so.
Sorry.
I would love to.
No, okay. Yeah, I would love to answer this question and go again dive into it, but really, it is not an option. It is just not an option. Ukraine must win this. So but let me get it back to the debate we were having also before, linking it to the question of investing in our own security. The dilemma here is that we have it in our own hands how long this is going to take, and yes, it's not in our interest to make it a long war, because indeed, and that is a problem, Ukraine, the soldiers, the military is suffering because they have less, the numbers are different. So we need to provide Ukraine with the weapons it needs to win, not with just the weapons it needs not to lose. Because that is effectively what we are doing today. We are giving Ukraine just enough to hold on. But if we need to give them the weapons they need to win. So that's why I am strongly pleading, time and time again, and I'm also getting some criticism about that, because I do think that it is a wrong decision to give Ukraine, we need to send them the ATACMS, the long-range missiles, but also to say to Ukraine, of course, you can target also the positions from where you are attacked from, also within Russia. I think it's paternalistic to say, yeah, no, you are our ally, but here is some missiles, and I know the escalation argument, that's what I get then, yeah, but it's escalation. This already escalated way too far, not because of Ukraine, but because of Russia. Russia can end this war today. But if Ukraine stops fighting, Ukraine will cease to exist. That is the problem. So there is not an option in my current state of mind to be philosophical about what if.
Thank you. I saw Mr. Sanford also would like to respond.
Just a few observations in addition. My take would be that Russia has already lost the war, because you have to look at what the original intention was of Russia, and that was to replace the government in Ukraine. That has failed. They occupied part of Ukraine. The question is how long they can keep that, or that they can expand that. And there's this theoretical possibility, of course, that there will be sort of interim arrangements to end the hostilities, something like a ceasefire or whatever. But the idea that Russia wins, in my view, is a very strange idea. Russia wanted this war with one specific purpose, and that is replace the democratically elected regime in Ukraine. A democracy next to Russia. That's a threat. They wanted to take away that threat. That has failed. And in my mind, there is no possibility that still that can happen. So the only thing that might happen is that purely on the battlefield, there will be a situation where there is no more gain for a while, if there is not enough military support for Ukraine. And then I think part of the question was also, could this result, Russia wins, Russia cannot win because it has already lost its objectives. So Russia is doing something to keep the damage, its damage control, what Russia is in fact doing at the moment. We're at huge cost for Russia. New border, there is not a new, will not be a new border. There may be a ceasefire But it is in the interest of all member states of the United Nations, not only the situation in Europe, but also in Africa and in Latin America and in Asia, not to recognize changes to borders that have been affected by force. The core element, if you accept that on a scale like this here, it can happen anywhere. So that is impossible. There will never be a recognition of a change in the borders of Ukraine.
I thank you very much. I saw Mr. Yitzhak. I'm very conscious of time, so you started the panel and you will end it. I think that's very fitting, but this is the last word.
Very, very quickly, I think essentially the EU cannot also have security if Ukraine loses this war. Because we have all seen the division of President Putin was not only, he never articulated that he had, although I fully agree, he's never articulated that they cannot stand a democracy next to their border. But what he's articulated is the idea that there are historical claims because of which Ukraine can be invaded. So if we go along with this idea, next to the absurdity of international law, then of course there was a time when the United States were part of the Soviet Union. Of course there was a time when Russia saw fit to attack Poland. So it's not going to stop. This is an existential war for the European Union as well.
Never stop until we stop them.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the whole panel.